Welcome in, everybody, to our Dynasty rookie mock draft, our first one of the offseason. I'm super excited for you guys today to present this to you. It is February 4th, so the Super Bowl is a week away. The Senior Bowl just happened. The Combine is about less than a month away, so there's still a lot. Free agency, all that stuff's going to change. There's still a lot of things that are going to change, but we're going to start going over some rookie mock drafts because now is the time to start paying attention to it if you haven't been already. Again, this is a Dynasty rookie mock draft. This is a superflex, non-tight end premium. We'll say half PPR. If you want to call it PPR, that's fine too. It won't really change too much here. And we're only going to go over one round today. We will be putting out more content where we're going over rookie mock drafts, second, third round, probably not fourth round until after the NFL draft, just so we get a better idea of players that are taken. But definitely the top 3 rounds we're going to be going over. And I'm just super excited. And, it's really, really important. Again, it's February 4th, but it's really, really important that you start paying attention now to the feel of where rookies are going to be taken in the Dynasty rookie drafts. Because if you start paying attention now, you have less influence from the hype of players rising a week before the NFL draft or players rising after the NFL draft because of who they were drafted by. The perfect example is Jonathan Taylor versus Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Who's the best running back in that draft class? Well, if you're paying attention in January and February and March or during the college football season, all offseason, it was Jonathan Taylor. Everyone knew Jonathan Taylor was the better running back over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. However, Clyde Edwards-Helaire got drafted to the Chiefs in the first round, and he shot up the boards, went over Jonathan Taylor. But if you were paying attention in January and February, you knew that Jonathan Taylor was the better running back, and hopefully you went that direction. So, again, we're going to get right into it here. This is, once again, a Dynasty rookie mock draft, just the first round in a super flex, non-tight end premium, half or full PPR. Doesn't really matter. I think we have a pretty good idea. I'm going to share my screen with you guys here. I think we have a pretty good idea in terms of about 7 to 9 players that I think are almost locks, as close as to locks as you can get to being first rounders in the rookie draft. So once again, not once again, but I should preface by saying this. I'm drafting not only how I personally think it should be drafted, but how I also think maybe it will go in your rookie drafts, because everyone has different opinions. People are going to hype up certain players. So I'm doing a combination of this is how I think it should go. And this is how, maybe it's going to go in your draft. So without further ado, we're just going to get right into it. And this may surprise some people, but I do think the first tier of players, and it's always important to know the tiers because, where you can trade back in a tier and still be in that tier and pick up value, right? So to me, in a superflex rookie draft, there is a tier of 3 players in tier 1. Now, that may shock some people, but to me, it's Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, and it's Jaden Daniels, assuming Jaden Daniels is going to get drafted where a lot of people are mocking him to get drafted as a top 3 pick, okay? If that happens, then I think you can make an argument for Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams because of his rushing ability. Is it more of a risk? Yes. But is there potentially more upside there? Potentially, yes. I know Caleb Williams is being looked upon as a generational talent. That's, compared to Patrick Mahomes and all this stuff. But there's always risk in that, especially if non-rushing quarterbacks. You need to be able to run, and I think Caleb can move. He can put up Patrick Mahomes-like rushing numbers. But I think it's safer of a pick to go Caleb Williams. I personally think that's the player I would go with at the 101 in a super flex. But again, in my opinion, if you want to go Jaden Daniels or Marvin Harrison, if you're stacked at quarterback, go right ahead. So I'm always going to lean the quarterback in a super flex. Just think about Bijan versus the quarterbacks last year. Everyone said, oh, no, Bijan's the 101. And yeah, maybe we didn't have as good of quarterback prospects as we did last year compared to this year. But CJ Stroud, by far and away, if a quarterback does well the rookie year, they're so much more valuable in super flex than a running back or even a wide receiver, right? Just look at Dynasty startup drafts. Where does Justin Jefferson, the first receiver in most people's rankings in Dynasty, go? the 106, 107, 108, right in there, right? There's 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks taking over the top receiver. So to me, I think the right play is to go Caleb Williams. Now, again, there's really no wrong answer here. Maybe you can go on team need. If you're at the 102, someone takes Caleb Williams, you really need a quarterback and you don't have another pick in the draft, you can go Jaden Daniels. You want to grab Marvin Harrison, go for it. I'll do Marvin Harrison. That's how I think it's going to go. But again, if you have a top 3 pick, you should be really, really excited because you're going to either get Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, and to me, it's Jaden Daniels over Drake May because of the rushing ability. It's kind of like Anthony Richardson and why he went number 1 in terms of the quarterbacks last year for most rookie drafts was because of his rushing ability, right? So I think we have the same situation here. Again, especially if, according to mock draft database, which compiles all these mock drafts and shows you where people are being drafted according to all these different mock drafts, Jaden Daniels is going number 3 overall to the Patriots. So Jaden Daniels is the next player off the board. To me, this should be the top 3. Could that change? Of course. If Jaden Daniels falls to maybe late in the, pick 8, 9, 10, maybe you can make a case for Drake May over them. So now we kind of get into the next group of players, in my opinion. And that is Drake May, especially if he's going to be, the second overall pick. And it's Malik Neighbors. These are kind of my next 2, in my opinion. Now, Malik Neighbors, his most common spot to be drafted is 6th overall to the Giants. So we're talking about a player that was being drafted top 6 in the NFL draft. If Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't in this draft, Malik Neighbors would easily be by far and away the number 1 wide receiver, in my opinion. Maybe not far and away, but he would be the number 1 receiver in a lot of draft years. So I think he's really, really good. The question is, do you take Drake May or do you take Malik Neighbors? And this is tough. If I play in a 10-team league, superflex, I might lean Malik Neighbors because quarterbacks are a little bit more available in a 10-team league. If I play in a 12-team, which is what this draft is, I'm probably going to go Drake May. But I'm not going to argue if you do want to take Malik Neighbors here at the 104. But again, super flex, man, quarterbacks are just so valuable if they hit. Again, CJ Stroud is now being taken potentially as high as 3rd overall in your Dynasty startup drafts because he's a quarterback. So I'll lean Drake May here. And to me, that makes the 105 pretty easily. So again, if you have a top 5 pick, you should be pretty excited because you're going to get one of these 4 players or you're going to get Malik Neighbors. That's how I personally think the top 5, as we sit right now, February 4th, assuming it plays out like a lot of people are mocking, where all 5 of these players are going in the top 6 picks, which is crazy, right? All 5 of these guys are going in the top 6. So now, again, this is non-tight end premium. So I'm not a huge – how I approach the tight end position in general is like I don't like drafting tight ends in the first round for one. Now, I know there's exceptions, Kyle Pitts, guys like that. You really, really have to be so good to be a true difference maker at the tight end position. There's very few players who are truly difference makers at the tight end position. And for that reason, here at the 106, I'm going to take Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. His most common projected landing spot is 9th overall to the Bears. So we're talking about another top 10 wide receiver in the draft. I know he's wide receiver 3 potentially being drafted, but he's still a top 10 receiver, guys. That's insane to be a top 10 receiver. I would take Rome Odunze here over Brock Bowers personally. Now, would I be surprised? This is, to me, he's in his own little tier, Rome Odunze. I personally would never take Brock Bowers over in non-tight end premium leagues, take Brock Bowers over Rome Odunze. So to me, it's, again, the first 3 picks are in a tier, and then Drake May, Malik Neighbors. Maybe you could throw Rome Odunze into this tier. I personally think there's a difference between Neighbors. I think Neighbors is closer to Marvin Harrison than Odunze is closer to Neighbors, if that makes sense. So this is how I expect the top 6 to go. Now it starts getting a little tough, right? How I think it will play out if Brock Bowers does get drafted by the Chargers 5th overall, I personally think he will go. I think it's very unlikely he falls outside the top 7. So I'm going to take Brock Bowers here. Would I do it? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If a quarterback like a Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy go in the top 12 or 15, I'm taking them over Brock Bowers personally. Now, do I think it's going to play out that way? Probably not. Again, I think the idea of Brock Bowers with Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers is going to be too juicy for someone that they might even take him in the top 6 or the top 5 because tight ends, people want to find the next Kelsey. There's so much value in that, right? So this is kind of, to me, this is the top 7. I'd be very, very surprised. Right now, this is the top 7 in most Dynasty rookie mock drafts that you're going to see. I'd be very surprised if any of these 7 players fall further than the 110. Now, could a Dunze or Bowers fall a little bit? Of course. If another quarterback's taken in the top 10, top 12, top 15, I would take them over potentially a Dunze or Bowers in a super flex, right? Depending on my needs. So, but these 7 players, I'd be very, very surprised in a super flex, non-tight end premium rookie mock draft. I'd be very surprised if these 7 players are not taken within the first 10 picks. So now we get into where it starts getting interesting, right? So if you have a top 7 pick as of now where we're standing, you're super excited. And that could even increase to a top 8 or 9 pick, depending on how the draft goes. But right now, if you have a top 7 pick, you get one of these guys, I think you're pretty damn excited. Next up here, now, again, I'm kind of basing this a little bit off of the mock draft database. And what that's saying is Bo Nix, the most common landing spot for him is the Broncos at 12. And I just don't think you can really pass up on that. I'm not a huge Bo Nix fan. But I do think he can be a solid player for you. And just like, I don't know, QB 12 to 15 consistently every year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a player like that. And there's value in that in a super flex 12-team league. So if he does, again, this is where it starts to get tough because we don't know where players after this are really going to land. But if Bo Nix, that's why I'm kind of using the mock draft database. I'm pretty confident the first 7 guys are going to be drafted within the first 15 picks. After that, it gets a little shaky, but I do think Bo Nix has a really good chance at being drafted in the top 12. There's just too many teams that need a quarterback. So I'm going to take him here. Again, super flex. I would take Bo Nix at the 108. Again, now it starts to get a little bit more tricky. There's a couple other receivers. I think there's 3 actually that are being projected. Actually, there's 4 other receivers, according to mock draft database, that are being projected as first-round picks. It's Keon Coleman, it's Brian Thomas Jr., it's Troy Franklin, and it's Xavier Legette. Okay. Do I think that's going to happen? It could. It could. I've heard as many as potentially 9 receivers being drafted in the first round. It's probably going to be closer to 6 or 7, but I guess it's possible. So personally, again, not knowing where people are going to be drafted, someone that I really, really like, there's 2 guys that I really like that are kind of back-to-back for me, and that is Brian Thomas Jr. And his most common draft spot is 28 overall to the Bills. I like that. And Troy Franklin. These are two receivers that I'm still kind of torn on who I like more. Might depend on draft capital versus landing spot. Again, Brian Thomas Jr. is being drafted most commonly to the Bills at 28. Troy Franklin 30th to the Ravens. So those are both pretty good spots, I'd say. I like Brian Thomas's a little bit more. Now we get into some more interesting stuff, right? I personally think JJ McCarthy is going to be a first-round pick. I think he's going to test very well at the combine. I think people are going to fall. Someone's going to fall in love with him. Again, there's way too many teams that need a quarterback. If we just go to Tankathon, we go down the list. The Bears, potentially. Commanders. Patriots. All need quarterbacks. Giants. Potentially the Titans. Falcons. Jets, if they want to find a replacement for Rodgers. The Vikings. The Broncos. The Raiders. if they want to, they don't trust Aiden O'Connell. Potentially New Orleans, if they want to jump back up in the first round and take, their quarterback of the future. Seattle is another one. We're at 12 teams now. The Steelers, 13 teams now. So we're talking about 13 teams in the NFL, just, three under half the teams that need a quarterback. I just think it's crazy to think that J.J. McCarthy doesn't go in the first round. I don't think it's crazy, but I think there's a really good chance. So now, if he does go in the first round, I'm probably taking him, depending on where he goes, potentially over Bo Nix, definitely over Brian Thomas Jr. and Troy Franklin if J.J. McCarthy is a first-round pick. Okay. Now, I didn't draft him like that because I think there is a chance he is a second-round pick. But again, we got to kind of balance it right now. We just don't know. This is top 7. We know 8 through 12. It gets a little shaky. We need to really solidify where people are being drafted. So with this last pick, there's a few options here. There's two other wide receivers that are being projected to go in the first round, Keon Coleman and Leggett. I'm not a huge fan of either one of those guys, to be honest. I like Leggett a little bit more than Coleman. I need to go back and watch a little bit more, in my opinion. Adonai Mitchell is going 33rd, which is first pick of the second round, to the Panthers. Xavier Worthy, 37th overall to the Chargers. Michael Penix, 51st to the Steelers. Jonathan Brooks, 56th overall, and Ladd McConkey, 63rd to the Chiefs. I think if it were to exactly play out like this, I think I would reach actually a little bit, and I think I would take Xavier Worthy. I like Worthy a lot. I like that he was an 18-year-old kind of dominating the college football for Texas. Is he a smaller guy? Yeah, but we've seen smaller guys be successful recently. People are speculating, well, is he just like a slot guy? I don't know. I think he can play on the outside. I really like Xavier Worthy. If he falls to the Chargers, who, again, they have Keenan Allen, but he's getting old. Mike Williams is probably a cap casualty. Quentin Johnston, we don't think it's going to work out. Xavier Worthy could just be this, Herbert, tied to Herbert, and be the number one receiver for Herbert for the next 5 years. So there you have it, guys. This is our first Dynasty rookie mock draft, the first round. Again, super flex, half or full PPR, whatever you want, non-tight end premium. Again, it goes Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Malik Neighbors, Roman Dunze, Brock Bowers, Bo Nix, Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin, J.J. McCarthy, and Xavier Worthy. Now, if you're just tuning in and you jump to the end, picks 1 through 7 to me. So picks 1 through 3 are in a tier of they're in tier 1. Any one of those 3. If you want to take Jaden Daniels, number 1 overall, I'm not going to fight you because he's a rushing quarterback, and we know what rushing quarterbacks can do in the NFL. They can be the number 1 overall quarterback in fantasy football, even if they don't pass the ball that well. Look at Justin Fields. I know he wasn't number 1 overall, but the dude was a monster, and he averaged like 150 yards passing. Caleb Williams is probably the safest quarterback bet here. I think he's going to be really good. Does he have number 1 overall potential? Probably slightly less than Jaden Daniels, but there is potential for sure. Marvin Harrison Jr., we all know how great he is. If you want to take him number 1 overall, go for it. I personally wouldn't, just because, again, look at CJ Stroud last year. He would be far and away the number 1 pick. If a quarterback hits as a rookie, they're so much more valuable in Superflex. That's the first tier. Next, I think it's Drake May, Malik Neighbors in the next tier 2. If you want to throw a Dunze in there, go ahead. I think as of right now where we sit, I have a Dunze in tier 3 by himself. So to me, it's either Drake May or Malik Neighbors. You can make an argument for Malik Neighbors. In a 10-team league, I might take Malik Neighbors over Drake May just because quarterbacks are a little bit easier to find in a 10-team league. Roman Dunze, to me, is in a tier right now by himself in tier 3. I don't think he should go past 6th overall, especially if he's going to be drafted in the top 10, which is a lot of people are projecting. Brock Bowers, I probably would actually wait a little bit. Like if Bo Nix goes 12th overall, I would probably take Bo Nix over Brock Bowers personally. I put Brock Bowers at 7th overall because if he goes to the Chargers with Harbaugh and Herbert, I think someone in your league's gonna reach on him, and I think it's almost impossible he gets out of the top 7. And I think he even goes as high as 5th overall. Again, I wouldn't do it in a non-tight end premium, but I wouldn't be crazy if it happened. Bo Nix was next year, again, super flex. This was based on the assumption that he is going top 12 overall. I just think it's way too valuable to let first round quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks drafted in the top 12, they shouldn't be going further than potentially seventh overall. Brian Thomas Jr. and Troy Franklin are two receivers that I'm kind of back and forth on. I don't know who I like a little bit more. It might depend on landing spot here. And in the mock draft database, Brian Thomas's most likely spot is, or most commonly mocked spot is the Buffalo Bills, whereas Troy Franklin is the Ravens. I'll take Brian Thomas with the Bills and Josh Allen over Franklin with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. And then you have J.J. McCarthy, who, again, I kind of drafted him here because I think he's going to go in the first round, to be honest. But if he is a first-round quarterback, I probably put him as high as 9th overall, potentially over Bo Nix, depending on where he goes, and potentially over Brock Bowers as well, by the way. So J.J. McCarthy, to me, he can swing from, I know I have him 11th here, he could be the 107, in my opinion, depending on where he goes. And he can even go higher than that if he goes in the top 10. We don't know. It's way too early to know. And then Xavier Worthy, I took at 12. This is a very fluid spot. The back half of the draft is very dynamic, very fluid right now. It's February 4th. We're several months away from the NFL draft, so a lot can change here. I took Xavier Worthy because he was going, I think, 37th overall to the Chargers. So he was an early second-round pick going to the Chargers, and I like that landing spot. And I like Xavier Worthy. But that's it, guys. That is all I have for you today. As always, like and subscribe. We're going to get more of this content coming out all off season. We're going to be doing more mock drafts. We're going to be doing second, third round mock drafts, even fourth round when the time comes. Love to get you guys involved. If you do want to join in a mock draft, that'd be awesome. We'll try and figure that out. Maybe we'll go live, show you the link and all that stuff. So appreciate it as always, guys, and we'll catch you guys next time.